Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Planning Committee of the 1st of July 2026. The first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm substituting for Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. Councillor Brake.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm substituting for Councillor Etheridge.
Barry.
Oh,
Thank you.
Sorry, beg your pardon.
Right, thank you. Councillor Hellcross-Scott.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here for Councillor Field.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda are the records of the meeting held on 3rd of June 2026 approved. Item 3 on the agenda, I can confirm that there are no late items which do not appear on the main agenda. Item 4, do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes, I have an interest in applications, agenda items 11 and 12, which I've already agreed with the Chair that I will leave the meeting before those so you can talk at them at your leisure. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Yes, Chair. Item 9, the land by Moore Street. I was telephoned early this morning by a representative of Medway Homes, who I told I did not consider that was good practice to ring members of the Planning Committee on the morning of the application. He seemed not to be too bothered about this. So I told him that I will be going into the planning meeting with an open mind and I didn't need any further information from him. And there the conversation ended. I don't know if anybody else who has had those telephone calls. I presume I would not have been the only one.
Thank you. I'll just go over to Chief Planning Officer.
Chair, thank you very much. Thank you for what you've said, Councillor Galvin. You dealt with it, as always, absolutely appropriately. Councillor Jones contacted me this morning to say that he had received a similar phone call and that was likely to be other members receiving those phone calls. I then contacted Medway and advised them almost along the lines that you have, Councillor Galvin, that is not appropriate to contact members of the Planning Committee individually in advance of the committee. Members would not be able to talk to them because they have to go in with an open mind. And can they tell their PR company to stop the phone calls? And they came back and assured me that they were not going to make any further phone calls. But thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Right, thank you. So before moving on to the main part of the agenda, is it agreed by members that for agenda item 6, Leader of the Council, Councillor Vince Maple speaks as ward member. Agenda items 5 and 8, Councillor Luella Prenter speaks as ward member. And for agenda item 7, Councillor Mandarakis speaks as ward member. Is that agreed? Yeah. Oh, sorry, no, apologies. And also, Chief Planning Officer is going to read out a statement on behalf of Councillor Crozer because he couldn't make it to tonight's committee. So now we move on to the first planning application, which is agenda item 5, 101 Balmoral Road. Sam Pilbeam will be presenting this application. So over to you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion of an existing C3 dwelling house into a 6-bedroom, 6-person Class C4 HMO. There are no proposed external alterations as part of this application. The application site sits centrally along Balmoral Road, just shy of Avon Road, the junction between Avon Road located here, which is approximately 200 metres to the west of Gillingham Station and the mouth of Gillingham High Street. In terms of the immediate context, the application site forms part of a terrace row of 2-storey properties within relatively narrow but proportionally deep curtilages. As you can see, it's a relatively dense area. In terms of the parking, much of the parking is accommodated on street. However, the application site does fall within the threshold of a car parking management zone, meaning that any future parking permits can be controlled accordingly via planning condition. Dropping into the street scene, the application site is the one located just off centre in the purple, with views located on the left. you can see the existing density down the street scene. And again, the images on the left and on the right-hand side further illustrate the density as well as the existing parking arrangement and general character of the street scene. Looking at the elevations, as I said, there are no proposed external alterations in this instance. The existing dormer and roof lights are already on site and are permitted development. Internally, the existing dwelling comprises of a total of 4 bedrooms, including 3 on the first floor and 1 within the loft, as well as supporting lounge, dining and living room on the ground floor. The property also benefits from an approximately 10-metre deep rear garden. Internally, the alterations are relatively minor. However, they include subdivision of the kitchen and lounge and the rear ground floor outrigger extension, addition of 2 ensuite bedrooms on the ground floor, an additional ensuite bedroom on the first floor, and a final ensuite bedroom within the loft. The remaining 2 bedrooms on the first floor would share an ensuite bedroom located centrally. All bedrooms would either meet or significantly exceed the standards set out within the MPPG in terms of the space, and likewise would be afforded sufficient degrees of light and outlook. In terms of communal space, the remaining kitchen lounge area comprises of a total of 21 metres squared, which is considered sufficient to support the functioning of the HMO for a total of 6 occupants in this instance. Finally, turning to HMO density, the image on the right-hand side has been taken from the Council's HMO evidence paper. In this instance, illustrating that within a 500-metre radius of the site, there are 49 HMOs within that proximity, which represents which as a percentage of the housing stock represents 1.3% of the total housing stock. More specifically, along Balmoral Road itself, there are 6 HMOs within this section of Balmoral Road, which, when considering the density alongside its proximity to Gillingham High Street, is not considered to represent an overproliferation of HMOs. As such, the application is recommended for approval, subject to conditions contained within the officer's report. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. I now move over to Ward Member Councillor Luella Prenter, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair and members, for having me along and allowing me to speak to you this evening. I'm here to speak against this application that has been recommended for approval by officers for these reasons. Firstly, there's a lack of documentation on the portal for the committee to make a decision. Although it may be common practice, it's not suitable in such high density area to have these in advance. Members should be given the appropriate information. Any conditions connected should be made after the information has been submitted. How can the committee be expected to scrutinise each application in full without seeing these documents and being given the extra opportunity to ask for more information if required? Documents such as a waste management plan, which isn't just a refuse storage arrangement as indicated in the conditions that listed by the officer. It should be a proper waste management plan, clearly showing how it will be stored and handled and giving the council some sort of scope to hold the owners to account if it's not carried out as specified. This is to prevent excess waste being inappropriately deposited in the street and negatively affecting the street scene, as we have seen so many times before in areas where there's a high number of HMOs without waste management plans. There is no parking management plan, and although the report references the potential of a condition to restrict the application of permits, and the design and access statement suggests that even as one household this would be the same, well, it just wouldn't, as one household is not likely to have the potential for 6 adults to each have a car. In any case, there is no parking management plan provided, no plan for cycle storage, even though there is a requirement, and this is a requirement we should be adopting due to our emerging local plan. Of the documents that have been provided, they include a planning fire safety strategy that refers to a road in Orpington as a point of access. This is sloppy and shows contempt for this committee and lack of care. The plans that have been submitted on the portal are also incomplete as they do not reflect a kitchen on the original floor plan. The lounge is then proposed to become a kitchen and lounge in the same space for the potential of separate households to use communally. So where is the kitchen in the original house? The reason the Article 4 direction was needed in the first place was due to applications such as this being approved with no real effort being made for the benefit not only of the prospective tenants, but also the impacts on the wider community. This is wholly unacceptable, and the applicants of all HMOs should be made to make these documents available for consideration going forward before coming to this committee. Policy T8 of the local plan supports planning applications for HMOs where they do not contribute for an over-provision of HMOs in the area. Contrary to the design and access statement that there is a limited number of dwellings subdivided into flats and HMOs, as well as the report from officers suggesting there's no over-concentration of HMOs in this area, as ward councillor, I can honestly state this is not correct. The road has 13 known HMOs alone on record, on council records. I counted a further 4 applications, as well as many more houses converted to flats, both with and without permission. Many HMOs, including those used for supported living, as well as care facilities for the elderly on this road. A simple search of the planning portal showed me these results this morning. Combined with a request to our private sector housing team, gave me the results that this forms a significant number of HMOs and house conversions on this road. I also know this to be true as I've visited residents in addresses on the street for casework that HMOs are not reflected on the council's own list. There are also HMOs called hotels not reflected in the report that reside on this road. A thorough investigation of properties in this road, I am positive, will find that the number of properties converted from family homes is an over-concentration, making up greater than 10% of the residential properties in the road. And this application should be refused on these grounds, or at least until the relevant documents are provided and a full investigation has taken place. We owe it to our residents to ensure these actions take place. Policy T8 also refers to the loss of family homes in the area. This road has many families living there, and this application would indeed contribute to the loss of family homes, so again goes against Policy T8 of the emerging local plan. Policy H7 of the existing local plan refers to HMOs being permitted where they're not adjoining commercial properties or other HMOs. The council's own records do not reflect either commercial properties or HMOs adjoining this property. This would in fact mean this property would have an increase in the comings and goings on the number of separate households living in one property. Do not be under any illusion, this is the same as one family living in the property. This is an incomplete application and it should not have been brought to committee until it was ready for proper scrutiny. In any case, I would appeal to the committee to refuse it outright on the grounds of over-concentration of HMOs and other house conversions such as flats and loss of community which is harmful to the character of the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prenter. And now move over to members. Any members? Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Reading the officer's report, it says all the bedrooms exceed the area requirements and there's a significant level of amenity space provided in the property. If the member disagrees with the amount of HMOs in the area, it's a criticism of the officer's report. It may be fair, it may be not. I can see there is no planning grounds that we can turn this down. It is very obvious by the amount of applications for HMOs that we're receiving that there is significant demand for this type of accommodation within Medway. If we turn these down, there will be a significant number of young people who will have to be sofa surfing or still living with their parents or travelling distances if they want to work here in Medway. If the market does what the market normally does, it will probably eventually come to an area where the amount of HMOs that are in excess of what is required, that an overshoot. That normally happens with markets. Then the amount will fall off. If there wasn't the demand for this sort of accommodation here in Medway, it would not be coming to this committee. So it shows there is a huge demand for this type of accommodation. We are here to provide a range of accommodations from HMOs, bed sits, right up to executive type of accommodation. They are all required here in Medway. So I think the demand needs to be met, and I I've not heard so far anything that, on planning grounds, that says we should turn this down. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you, Councillor Galvin. We do have the Article 4 direction in place now for this property. The reason that it's been put in is because of the amount of HMOs in this ward, and there is an over-concentration. I grew up around that area. Back in the early 90s, it was a problem there with the change of uses on this road, and now it is just out of control. When I was doing some research today, it was saying about 40 of the homes could have been converted. I haven't got the correct information for that because I'd have to go through the planning portal, but that wasn't working yesterday to enable me to go through it all. It's taken too long. But yeah, to me, it's also important we have family homes so people can have homes for their family and don't move out of the area elsewhere. So is there any more members? Councillor Howcross-Scott.
Yes, could I please ask the Mr. Philbin, did you look at excessive concentration of HMOs, which have been mentioned by Councillor Stamp and Councillor Prenter? Because there does, you know, I know that area quite well. My foster grown-up children live there. And there does seem to be a very high concentration of HMOs in that area. Parking, even as a disabled woman who have extreme mobility issues, I can never find parking. And that's already now. And I have to say, it lets Medway down because there's a lot of issues with litter and recycling and, you know, bins overfloweth, which in my opinion leads to vermin and you know, illness really. Had you taken those things into account, sir?
Thank you very much, Councillor. So in this instance, yep, the HMO density was looked at in the principles section of the report, and it was found that within this section of Balmoral Road, there are 6 HMOs, as per the HMO map on the screen now, which wasn't considered to be an over-concentration. Likewise, on the map, it didn't appear that there was a sandwiching of HMOs or properties insofar as to potentially result in adverse harm in terms of comings and goings from residents and occupants of HMOs. To your point about parking, there's a suggested condition. Sorry, I did note it down when the ward councillor was presenting. That's condition 5, to restrict car parking permits. And likewise, to your point about refuse, that's condition 4, to allow for the securing of refuge storage to the front of the property or to the rear, and condition 6 for a waste management strategy detailing how waste will be dealt with, and how if there are complaints, the applicant can reach out to the occupants of the HMO to rectify the HMO, rectify the issues with waste. Thank you very much, Councillor.
Councillor Bowen.
Hi, Sam. You said there's 6 in the road, 6 HMOs in the road. How many family homes are in the road? Not flats, but houses. Do you know, or rough idea?
I would struggle to guess the exact number without being given a little while, but in terms of that 500-metre radius, I can answer. The HMOs represent 1.3% of the total housing stock within that 500-metre radius. In terms of the road specifically, I wouldn't be able to answer that right now. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. You did say that there's going to be restriction on parking permits, is that correct? Yeah. I'm just reflecting on when I lived in an AMHO, there was a wide road and I could park right outside. And I'm just thinking in contrast to a road like this, there already is, from my memory of the area, great difficulty already in parking. The restrictions of permits, can you be specific what they are and also how many different other types of permits are available? Because I'm aware there isn't just a normal residence type parking permit. You could have one, I believe there's one if you're a carer, for instance.
So in the case of the car parking management plan, that would be sort of a more general condition requiring the applicants submit strategies in terms of both promoting sustainable transport measures. So, for example, implementing cycle storage facilities, as well as providing potentially leaflets in terms of bus routes, local bus routes, but also in terms of writing in terms of their tenancy agreements, insofar as to restrict the number of parking permits on this application site, and that would be residential parking permits. I don't think we're permitted to restrict any other types of permits in this instance.
Thank you. I mean, are you aware what the other permits are? Or is that not something in your remit? Because it's not particularly planning, of course.
Chief Planning Officer is going to come in.
Chair, thank you very much. Listen very carefully to the ward councillor. Thank you for the information you've provided. Listen very carefully to the questions and the points that you've made, Chair. In relation to refuse and parking, I think, as Mr. Pilbeam has advised, the conditions are appropriate and are normal there, and would help to control the refuse problem issues as well as the parking issues. And there are no controls on those at the moment as a single family accommodation. However, I think from what the ward councillor has said, and Chair, what you've said as well, that you're questioning the number of non-single family properties in that street. And yourself, Chair, you've just shown me some research that you've done in the last 5 minutes in terms of picking up potential HMOs or non-residential within the street. And Councillor Prenter, I'm not going to disagree with what you've said, because you've done that research as well. So maybe we go for a deferral of this application, so we do those checks in terms of the number of properties within the street which are not in single family accommodation, clarify exactly the number of HMOs, the number of flats, the number of care homes, and then bring this application back to committee with that information.
Councillor Gilbourne.
Thank you, Chair. Looking through the application and listening to the ward councillor as well as the Chief Planning Officer's comments just now, on planning terms, I can accept it meets all those conditions. And as my colleague has said, you know, we need this sort of variety of accommodation. And one thing I often refer to is, I know the Section 4 is in place now, but this concentration of HMOs within the 500-metre radius, which Sam talked about, is only 1.3%. And even if it was double that within the 500-metre radius, would that be a problem? Is it just because we're concentrating on one single road rather than the wider radius? So in many senses, I'd be minded to support this application because it meets all the planning conditions. But as the Chief Planning Officer said, and as the ward councillor said, if there's evidence that there are other factors that we ought to know as a planning committee, then I'd be agreeable to a deferral until we get more information.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Gilbourne. Yeah, because if we look at 3 Kingswood Road, the planning committee refused, and then it lost at appeal. That was dismissed at appeal, and that was because of the changes of uses to flats, supported living. It wasn't just HMOs, it was what was happening with all of those properties in that street. So it is important that we do have all of the information in front of us, I think. So, for deferral. Yeah. So I now go over to Vice Chair for deferral.
Chair, I move deferral of this application to consider the facts which the just wait till my colleague has finished, to consider the points raised about the variety of family accommodation in the area, in terms of properties which are not in family occupation, and the Chief Planning Officer then to bring it back to committee at a later date.
Thank you. Those for deferral of the application. Seconded. Oh, sorry, is that seconded? Yes, seconded. Right. Those for deferral of the application.
That's 15, Chair.
The application is therefore deferred. So now we move on to the next planning application, which is agenda item 6, which is 32 Salisbury Road, where senior planner Aaron Nichols will be presenting this.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. This application seeks planning permission from the conversion of an existing C3 dwelling house to a C4 5-person HMO, along with a single-storey extension to the rear. And the application is being brought to committee as a result of it falling within an area covered by the Article 4 direction in relation to HMOs. This slide shows a site location plan with the site outlined in red, with Chatham High Street just up to the north. Apologies. And this slide shows the application site in relation to its wider context. In regards to the surrounding developments, the surrounding built form is predominantly 2-storey dwellings with some dormer-style extensions, and there is also a parade of shops located to the east along Luton Road. And the properties directly surrounding the application site are predominantly formed of single household occupancies. The car parking in the surrounding area is via permits, and a condition number 7 is recommended to restrict occupants from obtaining permits. Here we can see the property when viewed from Salisbury Road, one looking towards the west and on the right looking towards the east. And here we can see an aerial photo with the property outlined in red. Here we can see the existing elevations and the existing floor plans as a 3-bedroom house with a basement. And here we can see the proposed elevations, which include the provision of a single-storey rear extension featuring a pitched roof to match the existing built form. And here are the plans as a 5-bedroom HMO. In regards to the proposed floor plans, it's considered that all of the bedrooms meet the minimum size requirements and will be served by an adequate degree of natural light and an adequate form of natural light and afforded suitable outlook. And the remaining communal space compromises of a 9.7 square metre kitchen and a 13-metre communal living room / dining room, both on the ground floor towards the rear. These would be shared amongst a total of 5 individuals. The kitchen area is considered as a general functional space for cooking and washing the clothes, whilst the living room is considered of a suitable size for the proposed number of residents. The proposals are considered to comply with policy T8 of the Reg 22 local plan. Here we can see the proposed site plan showing cycle storage and bin storage, and conditions are included for the submission of further details in relation to cycle storage, refuge storage, and a refuge strategy. And here we can see the proposed location of the HMO in relation to the surrounding HMOs with a 500-metre radius on the map, and there are 32 within 500 metres. It's considered that the proposed HMO would provide a good level of occupiers' amenity and would meet the requirements of the adopted and Reg 22 local plan, and as such is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. I now go over to Leader of the Council, Councillor Maple, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks to colleagues for allowing me to speak. Just on a point of clarification, I think because of the number of representations from residents, this would have come to committee anyway, regardless of the article. I think it has 7 letters of representation. So I think it would be here anyway, regardless of Article 4. But it's worth reminding colleagues once again, you may hear this later on as well, that Article 4 is obviously something we've got in place at the moment. I'm principally not opposed to HMOs. I've said that in many, many places. There are parts of Medway where there are too many HMOs, the density is high. You can see there on the map, there are some highly dense areas within 50 metres of where this site is. The reason most residents have raised issues with this is parking and traffic. I'll deal with both of those individually. I would ask colleagues to refuse this application. If you're minded to approve it, I would ask for deferral, and I'll tell you why when we get to the end. But on parking, this is complex. For those of you who don't know the area, this is sandwiched between two schools, All Saints School and New Road School, both of whom have got zigzags, as you would expect. So that limits the parking that you would expect to see there. And actually, Salisbury Road is an unusual road because some of it, but not all of it, is in the CPZ for what is a relatively small road. So not all of Salisbury Road is in the CPZ. That's a challenge as well. The bigger issue for me is traffic. I've had representations not about this application, but at the time this application has been live, from the New Road parents community. And they've made huge representations based on the issues of traffic and transport. If you know the area well, round the corner from this site is a viaduct, which has led to several incidents of road rage, there's no other word for it, putting additional pressures, and whether it's directly in the CPZ or not, people will have cars. If they have cars, they will seek to park them. This is a terrible place for parking at the moment, but the traffic and transport has led to a situation where highways officers are now seeking to carry out some investigatory work at the start of the next academic year. They want it to be in September to give it a good flavour for actually what does this look like, particularly those peak times of 8 till 9 and 2:30 till 4. We don't know what that work will show yet. There may well be further restrictions. This will take into account both Salisbury, Leicester, which is the road just off it to the corner, and Mills, which runs parallel to Salisbury as well. That could have huge implications for this community generally, but residents, and so a young boy stopped me at Chatham bus station and said to me, I'm really concerned about this additional property because of the pressures in the area. And hooray for that young man being interested in what's going on in his community. That's great. And the fact that he knew I was a bit surprising, but that's good too. So you can see both the residents who live there, but also the residents who visit there effectively 10 times a week. The parking and traffic is frankly unacceptable at the moment. That's no one's fault. That's not the council's fault. That's not the school's fault. That's not the parents' fault. That's not the developer's fault particularly, but they have to deal with the consequences. So if this had been an HMO the other end of Otway Street, for example, or Stirler Road, those would be roads where this wouldn't be the issue. It's unfortunate timing for them, but we are where we are. And politics, like everything else, is sometimes about timing. So from my perspective, on the basis of the ongoing situation being unacceptable, this would make it more unacceptable. So on that basis, I'd urge colleagues to reject the application. But if you are minded to approve it, I'd ask for that piece of work by Highways to be completed before any final decision is taken into account, because those proposals will have a direct impact on all residents, not just the residents at number 32. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Golvin.
Well, I have to say I'm mindful to accept this. I really fail to understand the opposition to providing accommodation that is desperately required here in Medway. So on that basis, I will be happy to see this go forward. I would also be happy that it was deferred so that the works that need to be investigated as outlined by Councillor Maple could be taken place.
Okay, Councillor Nestorov.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add my voice to Councillor Maple. I pass that road often in the morning, and you can see when parents are dropping their children, it's a total mayhem there. You have children crossing the road. You have all cars just stopping, dropping them. As well, I've passed on these roads particularly. There is not a single parking spot. It's like a wall on both sides with cars, and cars cannot pass, they have to wait for each other to pass. So I just wanted first-hand view, my view, that I pass there all the time. The situation about parking is terrible there.
Yeah. Me myself yesterday, I was looking on Google Maps, but I wasn't happy just looking on there. So I did actually drive down there today and have a look. And it is a very narrow road with cars parked on the pavement, which causes wheelchairs and prams cannot use the pavement. They'd have to go onto the road in some places. And even with the cars parked on the pavement, both sides, it was still quite tight in places for me to get through. So there are serious safety concerns with this. And I do believe that this street is at its limit and it cannot take any more cars. On Magpie Hall Road, which is at one end, that's got double yellow lines. So there isn't any overflow for where the cars can go. And also I have been, as Councillor Maple said, where there's road rage and everything. That actually happened to me once when I was out on a visit. I turned in and then I had to go back out and it was really hard. I nearly had to reverse back onto New Road, which is a main road. So there's just so many dangerous things here. There's bad visibility when you're pulling out of the road as well. So to me, to have this HMO, which brings all that extra vehicles with it, it just can't cope, in my opinion. Councillor Anang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My principal concern is with the parking because I myself, I don't like driving past that place because the roads are very narrow and there is no space to park. So when it comes to parking in that area, I think residents are already struggling. Even if you go to visit people, you don't get anywhere to park. So already they are struggling to find space near their homes to park. So I believe introducing a 5-bedroom home is likely to increase the parking demand, which I don't think it will be fair on residents living in that area. So in that situation, I think I would be supporting such a proposal if residents are not going to have places to park.
Okay. I also believe another reason for refusal for this, correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, is that it's loss of a family home. Doesn't that come under one of the policies? You can clarify.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, the property is currently, as shown, it's a 3-bedroom house and the proposals would take it from that C3 use into a C4 use.
So would that come under, would that conflict with adopted policy H7, which is the house is suitable family accommodation and should remain so?
Yes, Chair.
Correct. So we've got Article 4 in place for a reason, and that is to make sure that we are not going against the policy. So there's one that's going against the policy, and I also believe the risk one as well, which would start coming under, I can't find it now, but there are other policies that the danger of the vehicles in this street come over as well. So I think there's good reasons for refusal for this application. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make it absolutely clear to Councillor Galvin, this has nothing to do with being anti-accommodation of HMOs. I do support them in principle. What I'm anti is the idea of any chance of increasing the danger that there is already to children around schools. I want to be consistent with this. It's something that is well documented. It is a potential accident zone for children of all ages in between cars, and I have great concern about being able to park safely near to schools, and for that reason I think this is not a suitable place to increase the traffic and parking situation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, can I ask the Chief Planning Officer whether parking is actually a planning issue? Is planning or lack of parking a planning issue?
Did you want to come in, Aaron, on that?
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. So yes, when we look at the planning applications, we do look at the surrounding area. I've been out, obviously, I've done an inspection around the area, and as I said, I've recommended condition 7, which is the restriction, the same as my colleague, Mr. Pilgrim, mentioned on the previous application, and alongside that, the provision for cycle storage is also on there.
So, but just putting a restriction on there isn't going to stop people owning a car and using a car, and there's no way of controlling that.
It would be the same restrictions as my colleague mentioned. In its current use, it's a 3-bedroom property. You could have 4 adults in there that could have 4 cars, which would have an issue. I don't know how many were previously used. Obviously, we don't have that information, but I can only assess it on the information in front of me. And in its use as a C3 dwelling, it could be for 4 vehicles as well.
The problem is, though, it's for a 5-bedroom HMO, if they've all got someone around, you've actually got 10 cars. So it's going to create more cars. An HMO is going to create more cars than a 3-bed family house. Because did you say it's 4 bedrooms? I thought it was 3 bedrooms. It's 3, yeah, 3. So having 2 extra bedrooms is going to create more vehicles, and that it's already at its limit. Councillor Hale-Cross-Scott, did you want to come in?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Chair. Obviously, I know this area quite well because across the road is my ward, and I think these proposals, you're right, Madam Chair, they conflict with the council's Article 4, and, you know, the roads round there were meant for horse and cart, really, and I had a near miss of a child who couldn't ride the scooter on the pavement because of pavement parking, was riding the scooter the wrong way down the road, and that really frightened me, and because I was in the car with my foster children at the time. And, you know, I just think that we have Article 4 for a reason, and we need to protect the high concentration of HMOs that we can already see, and that's very clear up there. We've talked about family housing, the loss of it, you know, that's really sad for our communities, but also the pressures that does on parking, and also it's detrimental for the community of impact and the stability of the community. So I would say that we don't defer this, but we vote against it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've got quite strong grounds for refusal on this one, because we've also got policy T1. If a HMO generates volume of traffic or parking demand that exceeds the safe capacity of Salisbury Road, that's a reason for refusal. This will exceed it. This will just push it over the edge. Well, it is already dangerous. It can't take any more. So we've got that. We've got loss of family home as well that's been mentioned. Yeah, anyway, any other member? Sorry, Councillor Jones, I forgot you.
Yeah, my caution on this one is that the bottom of page 37 is more or less what the officer has just been alluding to. The current use as a single occupancy dwelling house. Whilst it's understood that the application site would not be able to meet its parking need off-street, nor does the current use as a single occupancy dwelling house. I mean, what concerns me a little bit is if you go for refusal on grounds of parking, you are faced with a situation rather like not far away from this site, the old Ropemaker's Arms, which was then converted to a pizza hut, a pizza house, and that I think, from memory, was because it was upheld on a the application was upheld on appeal by an inspector because it was felt that the sort of traffic and parking situation would be no worse as a pizza takeaway than it would be as a pub. So I think we need to be very clear, you know, whether we've grounds to, leaving aside for a moment the grounds to refuse or such as they might be in terms of a family house. whether we're on strong ground on the parking aspects. I'm minded to favour the local member's suggestion of a deferral for that reason, rather than outright refusal. I do feel we're a little bit at a disadvantage here, if I may say, because it's the second meeting where I've not seen a highways consultant or advisor at the meeting. I'm not at all asserting that our planning officers aren't competent to deal with questions, but I think it would be valuable for us to have a highways input, and that would be another very good reason for deferring it on those grounds. In terms of the family accommodation, I suppose the answer is the property is what it is. If a family have moved out and somebody wants to develop it as an HMO, we have to look at the application in front of us. But again, that no way detracts from the power of the point you're making, Chair. Thanks.
Well, I think we've got enough evidence in front of us. It doesn't have to be on parking. It can be on policy T1, where the HMO generates volume of traffic or parking demand that exceeds the safe capacity of Salisbury Road, which it would do. And policy T2, access to the highway and reversing hazards. There is definitely reversing hazards. And when you're at one end of Salisbury Road, if you're reversing out of there, you'd easily knock over a school child. It is absolutely manic. School times. So I do really think, going to this site today, think we have enough to refuse this application in front of us. Councillor Gilbourne.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd be minded to approve on the basis of what the officer has recommended, but subject to Councillor Maple and his request for a deferral, I can understand why we probably do need to find out more from highways about the area. But almost similar to the last application, if we defer just for deferral's sake, if we're still going to refuse it, then there's no point in a deferral. And I can understand all the points made, particularly about, is it the H7?
Yeah, policy H7, yeah, for the loss of family home, it's in the policy. Yeah. We've got Article 4 in place, and Article 4 is there for that reason, to protect this area. So I don't know why we're getting it in place if we're not going to go with it.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, do you want to come in, Chief Planning Officer?
Sorry, Chair. Thank you for. I just want to clarify what an Article 4 does. It doesn't say that the HMOs are unacceptable. What it says is that they require planning permission and should be considered against policy. So you can't refuse something being contrary to the to an Article 4 because it's not contrary to an Article 4. And I completely understand the strength of feeling in the room, and I know that members know the site very well. I think my word of I think Councillor Gilbourne has made a good point, which is if you don't go for a deferral, if you're going to refuse it anyway, there's no point in doing that. I think with the previous application, the point made by the ward councillor there was that we didn't have enough information there in terms of the number of HMOs or single family accommodation in the street. That's not the case with this application. So, Councillor Gilbourne, I think you're right. If members are minded to refuse it, then refuse it. The one thing I would say, the number of things I would say, policy H7 is pretty out of date now, but it dates back to 2003. There's been a lot, as the report says, been a lot of legislation changes since then. You know, the one which then effectively allowed for C3s to C4 without requiring planning permission shows an encouragement for the small units of accommodation. As Councillor Maple said in his introduction, he's not against the principle of HMOs. They're a valuable form of accommodation. We tend to find them in the more sustainable sites, which are close to town centres. And that can be in smaller properties such as this. And Chair, as you said, it's about assessing the application against the policy. The policies that I would draw members' attention to is T8, as well as the policy T1 that you referred to, Chair. That's on the bottom of page 35. I just say to members, you need to, there clearly is an existing problem there. It's been really well articulated by Councillor Maple and yourself, Chair. But what you need to, if you're going to refuse it, you need to show that this proposal would exacerbate those harms to the area. Hopefully that's helpful, Chair. Thank you.
Any other member? No. Okay. I now move over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Chair, I'm minded to move the recommendations as set out, in view of the comments by the Chief Planning Officer and others. So recommendation 32 Salisbury Road, Chatham, approval with conditions 1 to 8 as set out in the report. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you. Those for the offer, oh, is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the office's recommendation of approval.
That's 3, Chair.
Those against?
That's 10, Chair.
Thank you. So now we're going to go over to Councillor Jones in a minute for refusal. So Dave. Sorry. What did he do? Okay, so members, now we need to decide whether we're going to go for deferral or push for the refusal of the application. What's everyone thinking? Yeah, Councillor Gilbourne?
Yeah, I think what I said before, it's a bit pointless if it's going to be refused to go for it, so I wouldn't even put it forward as a motion.
Okay. Any other member? Yes, Councillor Peake.
No, I'm inclined to actually agree with that, because I think for us that know the area, we already know what a nightmare driving around, trying to safely negotiate all the parked cars that are there already, and just having another look at that, I don't see how that's going to help.
Okay. So, so for the reasons for refusal, what is everyone thinking of what reasons they would like? Yes, Councillor Jones.
Well, I mean, with one eye on the legal officer, one eye on the chief planning officer, as usual, I would probably move something along the lines of refusal on the grounds of loss of family accommodation and the parking and highways issues, the detailed wording to be worked out between the chair, vice chair, spokesperson and chief planning officer.
Yes, so for the highway safety, that it's already dangerous, yeah, that one. Is that okay? Yeah, right, thank you. So now go over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Chair, I move refusal of the application for 32 Salisbury Road, Chatham, on grounds of highway safety and parking issues and on grounds of loss of family accommodation, but the exact wording to be worked out between the chair, vice chair, spokesperson in conjunction with the chief planning officer.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for refusal of the application?
That's 12, Chair.
Those against?
Sorry, Councillor Jones, was your hand up then?
Against?
Oh, that's fine. That's 2.
Okay, the application is therefore refused. So now we move on to agenda item 7, planning application for 7 Camden Road. Senior planner Aaron Nichols will be presenting this application. So over to you, Aaron.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start, can I draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda for the inclusion of condition 9, which requires the removal of a shower in a bathroom serving the communal room, one of the communal rooms. This application seeks planning permission for the conversion of the existing C3 dwelling house to a C4 5-bed 6-person HMO, along with a single-storey extension to the rear, and the application is being brought to committee as a result of it falling within an area covered by the Article 4 direction in relation to HMOs. This slide shows the site location, with the site outlined in red, with Pier Road to the north, and Chatham with the Victory Pier development to the northeast, and then the Chatham Waters development to the northwest. This slide shows the application site in relation to its wider context. In regards to the surrounding developments, the surrounding built form is predominantly 2-storey dwellings with some single-storey bungalows to the south, and the properties directly surrounding the application site are predominantly formed of single household occupations. Car parking in the area is via permits, and again, a condition is included to restrict those. Here we can see the property viewed from Camden Road. It's the property in white, or cream, sorry. And here we can see some internal photos. It should be noted that this application was granted a lawful development certificate, and the works were underway prior to the Article 4 being adopted, and the applicants have completed those works. Here we can see the previous elevation sections as a 3-bedroom house. And here are the floor plans. Here are the previously mentioned lawful development certificates as a 6-bedroom HMO. And here we can see the previously refused for a 6-bedroom HMO, which was brought to the last planning committee. Here we can see the elevations in the sections, which include the construction previously approved L-shaped dormer with roof lights. And here are the floor plans as a 5-bedroom HMO. It should be noted, since the last application, obviously there's been a reduction in 1 bedroom, and one of the bedrooms has been converted into, proposed to be used as a communal living room here, which was previously proposed as a bedroom. In regards to the proposed floor plans, it is considered that all of the bedrooms meet the minimum size requirements and would be served by an adequate degree of natural light and afforded suitable outlook. The remaining communal areas spaces comprise of a 12.8 metre kitchen and a 10.1 metre communal living dining room, both on the ground floor, which will be shared amongst a total of 6 individuals. And the kitchen area is considered suitable as a general functional space for cooking and washing of clothes, whilst the living room is considered of a suitable size for the proposed number of residents. The proposals are considered to comply with policy T8 of the Reg 22 local plan. Here we can see the proposed location of the HMO in relation to surrounding HMOs with a 500 metre radius. Apologies. It's considered that the proposed HMO would provide a good level of occupiers amenity and would meet the requirements of the adopted and Reg 22 local plan, and as such is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So now go over to Ward Member Councillor Mandrakis, who has 5 minutes to speak.
So, thank you, Chair. Before I started what I prepared, I wanted to address some of the bits around the fact that HMOs exist, or the fact that HMOs are being filled means that there must be a market need. It does, but the size of the council's housing waiting list and people in homelessness, in temporary accommodation, also shows that there is absolutely a market need for 3-bedroom homes, which are just being eaten up by being converted into HMOs. So then, to go into this objection is not about resisting change or development, it's about ensuring what is approved is appropriate, balanced and does not harm the fabric of the community. A key concern in this case is over-concentration. The report mentions that there doesn't appear to be many HMOs within the immediate vicinity. However, reports from residents and a visual walk around indicates that this is not the case. Numbers 2, 12, 20, 22, 1, 3 and 9, although I believe since when we did the walk around, I think number 9 is actually flats rather than a HMO. But they're all on Camden Road, 13 and 20 on Chatham, which is the road that runs across on that map, and then 24 on Pier Road are all listed as HMOs. It's not an insignificant number, and whilst I can appreciate that these might not be registered and licensed with the council, the impact on the area is still significant. I also agree that HMOs do fulfil the need within the housing market, but this level of concentration has a very real and measurable impact on community cohesion. The transient nature of HMOs mean residents come and go more frequently. Stable neighbourhoods depend on long-term residents putting down roots, building relationships with neighbours and contributing to local life. When there's a high proportion of properties at HMOs, the nature of that area inevitably changes, which is not a criticism of the individuals that live within HMOs, but a recognition that the cumulative impact of too many in a small area alters the balance. If any residency has a high turnover, these residents can't be as invested in their local area as they're naturally not concerned with identifying long-term trends and issues. Higher concentration of HMOs often bring increased pressure on local amenities, including waste collection, parking and public services. Where the report references the proximity to public transport, but there's no way to police whether residents will indeed also have a car, given that the area already has permit parking, with many residents having to park many streets away from their home. I can't envision a scenario where 6 extra residents does not impact on that amenity. And then whilst I appreciate that this applicant has done the right thing by submitting an application, an approval would still add to the cumulative impact of how many are operating in the area without being registered. For these reasons, particularly the over-concentration and impact on parking, respectfully urge members to refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we carry on, how many HMOs did you say were in Camden Road?
I didn't say how many so were in Camden Road, but looking at the map in front of us, it shows 2 in Camden Road.
2. So we could have the same problem that we did for the first application, where we haven't got the all the information in front of us, because Councillor Mandarakis mentioned more than 2 that she's aware of. And also, there's only 34 properties in this street. So I've got the 6 Camden Road as a residential care home. We've got 3 converted to flats, what I've seen. So that's 4 properties. That's already taken it over the 10% of change of use. So I don't know what the feeling is from members, if you want to carry on with this application or if you want it deferred until we've got more accurate information. Any member? Councillor Anang? Right, okay, thank you. Yeah, so did you want to come in, Aaron?
Apologies, that is a mistake on my part. They're meant to be June, not July. But the correct drawings and everything are uploaded onto the system with the correct dates on them. But that is a mistake.
Peter Hockney?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sort of listening to the debate here. I would just like to strongly remind members that less than 2 months ago, this site was before you, and you refused it on the ground of the lack of internal communal space for the residents. So there was no concern about over-concentration.
We didn't have the correct
or
information
or
in
loss.
front.
But that's a decision of the local planning authority, Chair. So strong material consideration.
So so you're saying that we can't, if we found out another reason for refusal, that as a committee, we can't do that?
I'm saying you would be at a great risk of costs at appeal.
Okay, Councillor Goldwyn.
Mr. Maritime, it's interesting that this is the only one where we've actually got some photographs of the inside of one of these properties. And looking at the three internal views and the view of the rear garden, there's been a lot of money invested in that. I would say that the proposer has invested a lot of money and he will certainly appeal. And I think if we carry on as we are, blindly turning these things down, we are going to end up with some heavy costs awarded against this council. Most of the reasons I've heard tonight are basically on planning terms frivolous. And as I say, there is an acknowledged demand for this type of accommodation. And if you carry on like this, it's going to cost us dearly as authority. This council was up on the bones of its backside as far as its finances are concerned already. This cavalier attitude towards turning things down willy-nilly is not.
I wouldn't say that it's willy-nilly. I would say that there's already over-concentration in that area. And yes, it is a very lovely house and it would make a lovely family home. Councillor Bowen. Okay. Okay, let's just carry on the meeting. Councillor
All of you
Bowen.
this evening have demonised people who are living in this sort of accommodation.
Okay,
saying
can we
they
just
will not
carry on
make
with the
good
meeting,
neighbours.
please?
This isn't, you know, and if anybody hits back, you can't take it. I think you need to look at your own consciences on this, not mine.
Right, can we carry on with the meeting now? I'm going over to Councillor Bowen.
I noticed on the plans there's a shower room off the living space, so and condition 4 says the house of multiple occupancy hereby approved shall be occupied by a maximum of 6 people. I don't know if that's a typo or not, but can we make sure that put condition on that no more than five rooms are used as bedrooms, please?
Hi, yeah, so conditions included to limit it to a 5-bedroom, 6-person HMO, and there's the additional condition I mentioned, condition 9, which is to remove the shower that has been installed when the communal living room was proposed to be one of the bedrooms. So that would then make it just a bathroom, just like a toilet and a hand basin.
Councillor Nastoroff.
Something to explain something to me. So, Councillor Govin, you just told us we should go ahead and approve this. Isn't that bias? Like you're telling us, can you stop asking about and discussing the application and just go ahead and approve them? Can someone explain me? Does that not constitute us bias?
Councillor Gilbourne, did you indicate to talk? No. Oh, Councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, can I ask the Planning Department whether this would be considered a Tier A or Tier B application in the future? Well, I will say no more.
Chair, that's a good question. I haven't gone through the legislation which is going to come into effect as of the end of October, so I don't know the answer to that. If it's Tier B, then it would be triggered to committee, probably because of, at this moment in time, because of the decision of Cabinet that all these HMOs, but in a simple answer to your question, I don't know the answer to that one. Apologies, Councillor Kemp, but it won't come into effect until after the end of October anyway.
In which case, I won't say any more. Thank you.
Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, I do remember this application from a couple of months ago and the reasons that we, deferred it because of the lack of communal space. We've been back to the applicant. They've done what we've asked them to do. So and I like the property. I like the fact they've all got en suites. It's close to, very good transport links on Pier Road, also other shopping and things like that, as well as lots of students on the other side. So I was minded to approve it because I like the property. I like the fact that pictures are of what they've done inside, and it's a very good HMO. And I can't see any reason why we should refuse because, again, on planning terms, it meets all our policies. Thank you.
Okay. Can we just go to the picture where, the loft picture, please, where he stood in the room? So if you take away the sloping roof, does that room meet standards? If you don't include the sloping roof in it?
So yes, when measuring it using the standards set out, the National Sky Space Standards, it would meet the minimum requirements.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Garvin, you can't have a situation that when you speak, that's the word of wisdom, and we dare to disagree with you, and that's what willy-nilly, frivolous and whole other this. So please stop the nonsense. It's got nothing to do with I can take it or we can take it or not. We have a right to ask questions and to have our own opinion. Can I just seek further clarification? Sorry if I missed it. Councillor Bowen asked about the permission to 6 people and it's a 5-bedroom. We all know that in reality, it's quite possible that somebody may sneak in because you can't assume it that 6 people will be a couple into 5 bedrooms, that another bedroom could be set up in a larger room and they may think, oh, I've got permission to do that. Presumably that could easily happen and we would never know. That's my first expression of concern. The main reason why I put my hand up was I want to be completely clear on this. If I've understood Peter clearly, did you say that because we turned it down for that reason, and they have actually showed, as Councillor Gilborn said, really good faith, they spent money and done it up, and they've listened to us and made it a very appropriate place, and they've answered our questions, so they showed goodwill, put money behind it. We're going to be on a sticky wicket here because they've done, in effect, what we've asked. And are you then saying there will not be then a viable alternative on planning reasons to turn it down?
I think in terms of decision makers and essentially the applicant's response to decisions, there is a legitimate expectation that when you refuse an application on a certain ground, that if you overcome that ground, then a permission would be forthcoming. If you are to change your mind and come up with different reasons for refusal, then, as I say, that's not following through on the original decision and the legitimate expectation of the applicant. So that's where I think we would struggle in terms of an appeal, and certainly in terms of costs, because an inspector would have to consider whether it was unreasonable of the authority to come to a different decision in relation to a completely different aspect of the development that wasn't part of the original refusal.
Councillor Hellcroft-Scott.
Could I please ask Peter, when was Article 4 passed for the council? Because we do have these areas in Article 4. Councillor Luella Prenter, our housing portfolio, has done that for a reason, and those reasons are clearly on the map there. They're community of impact of HMOs, loss of family dwellings, stress of parking, highways, harm to character and balance, and the boys throwing their toys out opposite. I wonder if they've ever lived in a HMO, because I have.
So now go over to Chief Planning Officer.
Chair, thank you. The Article 4 direction came into effect as of the 22nd of January this year. I would just draw attention to the point that Pete was saying. The refusal was in May this year. So post the Article 4 direction coming into place, very, very recent. And I have to support everything that Peter has said. Refusing such a recent application, very, very recent, we're talking about just over, under 2 months. You can't come up with additional reasons for refusal. There is an expectation. Everything that Pete articulated really, really well. You can't refuse it on one ground in 1 month, 2 months later refuse it on another ground. That's not seen to be reasonable behaviour. And I think Pete's right in what he's saying in terms of the potential costs. Thanks, Chair.
I think the problem is, though, is because we wasn't given all of this information, we couldn't do that as a reason for refusal. That's the problem that we've got here. Councillor Kemp.
Yes, thank you again, Chair. I'm not going to use the term willy-nilly because it might offend, but we seem to have a predisposition to refuse HMOs for whatever reason. And we seem to be scratching around like hens in a coop at feeding time for reasons to refuse. However, we were given a clear steer from the Chief Planning Officer. Now, I don't think he's been ambiguous at all, and I think we ignore that advice at our peril. I mean, what's the point of having the Chief Planning Officer here giving us very, very strong steer if we're going to turn around and say we don't agree?
The problem is we weren't given the correct information to make a decision. It's not that we don't want HMOs. It's not that we're just refusing them for the sake of it. We are refusing them because there is over-concentration in these areas, and that is why these areas had Article 4 direction put in to stop this happening. Any other member? Councillor Nestorov.
I just want to come back on Councillor Kemp, since I guess you've been sleeping to most of the committees here. Most of the application for HMO, this committee actually approves. So you cannot say that we have disposition to not approve an application, but I could say that you are both in predisposition to actually approve. So that's the bias there.
Any other member? Right, so with regards to this application, I understand the risks of cost, but Article 4 is in place for a reason, as I have said. There is over-concentration, clearly, in this road, from what I found myself, from what the ward members seen, and from what is in front of us. So I am going to be voting for refusal for this, but I now go over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I move the recommendation which is in front of us, which is a recommendation 7 Camden Road, Gillingham, for approval with conditions. Conditions 1 to 8 are set out in the report, and condition 9 on the supplementary agenda, as the officer already reminded us about the shower room. Thank you. I so move.
Is that seconded? Yeah. Those for the officer's recommendation of approval for this application.
That's 8, Chair.
Those against?
That's 4, Chair.
The application is...
Oh, can we just do who's abstaining?
Oh, who's abstaining?
That's 3, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. So now we move on to agenda item 8, which is land adjacent to a borough road. Senior Planner Sam Pilbeam will present on this. Over to you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the subdivision of existing plot, demolition of an existing outbuilding and construction of a chalet-style bungalow. The application site is located within the urban area of Gillingham, sited centrally along Borough Road. For context, Gillingham High Street is up to the north, and just off the map to the south is Gillingham Park. Bounding the site to the west is Nelson Road, and to the east is Napier Road. Looking at the more immediate site context, Borough Road effectively bisects the frontages of Nelson Road and Napier Road, which you can see running down the flanks of the site. Therefore, whilst forming part of the urban area, the character of Borough Road does differ slightly to Nelson and Napier Road, insofar as its characters formed of a mix between terrace properties, which you can see located where my cursor is, smaller infill developments to the north and south, as well as smaller ancillary structures, including garages located in close proximity to Napier Road. I also draw members' attention to the area here, highlighted in blue, which forms part of the applicant's ownership. This property can be seen on the left-hand side image, which is number 154 Nelson Road. The image on the right-hand side shows the existing boundary treatment, which the application site is located behind, which currently formed effectively of vacant land, which formerly operated as a preschool informally. This use has ceased well over 10 years ago. These images just show some of the infill developments along Borough Road. So on the left-hand side, we have a semi-detached two-storey pair of dwellings with dormers to the front. And on the right-hand side, we see additional pairs of what appears semi-detached properties behind the existing building line. And these site photos we've taken in close proximity to the junction of Napier Road, where again you can see the scale along Borough Road does change in terms of you have the garages located closest part of the image, and then further away we have that build up to the two-storey level. On the right-hand side, I just draw a member's attention to the street tree, which has been considered as a site constraint in this instance. The root protection area has been plotted, and the footprint of the dwelling has been set away from this accordingly in order to conserve the character and obviously the health of the tree. These plans have just been included to illustrate to members the previous application that has been refused on this site and the scale of previous applications that have been submitted on this site too. This includes two blocks of 4 flats totaling 8 flats on the site, which effectively fill the entire plot. However, this was refused on a total of 4 grounds, including design, impact on neighbouring amenity, and impact on future occupants' amenity, as well as flooding and failure to pay to offset the SAM's bird fee. Relative to this, the proposed application is much smaller in scale, forming of a single chalet bungalow, which is located centrally within the plot. The applicant has opted for a chalet-style bungalow insofar as to conserve the existing amenities, particularly to those properties to the south in terms of overlooking and potential overbearing impacts, as well as also best use of the site on that first floor. It's understood that the area is generally comprised of 2-storey properties. However, given the varied character in this instance, it's considered the bungalow would be acceptable. And turning to the plotting on the right-hand side, you can see the bungalow is located relatively centrally, away from each of the boundaries, whilst also providing 2 car parking spaces meeting the council's parking standards, private amenity space, and also improving the private amenity space of 156, which previously came up to where this green line is here. The garden would now measure approximately 10 metres. Internally, property comprises a total of 3 bedrooms, 1 bedroom on the ground floor with outlook to the rear and to the side, and 2 bedrooms on the first floor with outlook to the front and additional light provided through these rear roof lights. All of the bedrooms would exceed the standards set out within the MPPG, including these bedrooms when taking into account the slope of the roof, as well as the total GIA of the property. The gross internal floor area of the property would also exceed the standards set out within the MPPG. finally turn into B&G. Given the constraints on this site, the applicant has opted to provide off-site credits in this instance to make up the mandatory 10% biodiversity net gain. Overall, the application is considered sufficient in design terms and would provide adequate levels of amenities for future occupants and conserve the existing conditions of amenity for residents. Therefore, is recommended for approval subject to conditions set out in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Sam. I now move over to Ward Member Councillor Llewellyn-Prenter, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair and members. Residents got in touch with me earlier this year concerned about this proposal and the attempt to squash a 3-bedroom house into a back garden of a terrace property in Gillingham. I'm against this proposal as effectively building a home into the rear gardens of not 154, as the officer said, 156 and 158 Nelson Road. Regardless if they're calling it land adjacent to 2A Borough Road, it is in fact a back garden. The building mentioned in the plans, the outbuilding, was used in the 80s as a consulting room for a doctor. There's insufficient space to provide a suitable garden for the care facility of the residents that live at 156 Nelson Road, in addition to this new build, because those residents do have access to that outbuilding. So we will be, if we allow this, we'll be removing their outdoor space. This is just backfilling of an already overdeveloped urban area, and approving it will not benefit occupants of either the existing property or the proposed new property. The papers indicate a concern with surface water and drainage, and I would like to highlight to members that residents of Borough Road reported only 6 weeks ago to the council that there was a health risk as sewage had leaked from the existing property into the street. There are also reports that a large tree that has been removed from the garden without permission in order to make way for this to be built on. Inquiries have been made for the relevant team at the council to check if that tree was protected. The plans make provision for a hard standing and parking for the new build property, but what amenity space is being afforded to the prospective occupiers of that proposed new build? No green space. There is no space there at all, certainly not sufficient to provide for a 3-bedroom house. In addition, removing the existing brick boundary garden wall that runs along Borough Road will seriously alter the street scene and that's been in place since the houses were built. Replacing the wall with a hedge will effectively open up the road, so the potential for further dropped curbs that will remove precious parking spaces from the wider community, which is in a controlled parking zone. The report suggests that the hard standing will provide parking for the proposed house of 2 cars, which is the requirement for a 3-bedroom house. Upon visiting the site today, I can see that there's no way that 2 modern cars would fit back to back into that space, and this will inevitably leave any more than 1 vehicle to park on the road instead, adding to the parking pressures. In addition, there are currently 2 parking spaces side by side located on the site that we're talking about, in use day and night at present by the staff that work in the care facility at 156 Nelson Road. And removing them will add to the pressures on parking on Borough Road and will affect existing residents negatively, as these staff will still need to park somewhere. Gillingham South Ward is an urban area that is already congested, and building into rear gardens of former family homes will prevent them from ever being family homes in the future. And as we've heard, although there are pressures for HMOs and various other accommodation, family homes are much needed. The unkept site has been left in this condition by the owners. The design and access statement suggesting the gardens of 156 and 158 Nelson Road have not been used, but they have been effectively been prevented from use for the benefits of the occupants by the owners in what appears to be an attempt to progress this application to build into the rear garden. Removing the garden space will remove it forever for future inhabitants of both properties. The potential future inhabitants of Borough Road will have no garden space and will be overlooked by the homes on Nelson Road. Be under no illusion, this is a 2-storey building, regardless of it being called a bungalow. There is still not sufficient outdoor space there around the building and parking to allow for what could be the inhabitants of a 3-bedroom property. Allowing this application removes the right to a garden space for the residents on Nelson Road to have equality with their neighbours, and also gives no outdoor space for the residents of the new property. It's a money-making scheme that will alter the existing street scene, have a negative impact on parking and reduce the quality of life for the vulnerable adults in the care facility, as well as those who would be future residents of the proposed property. When viewing the space in person, the residents of the supported living facility next door on Borough Road also agreed that this is insufficient space to build a dwelling in a back garden. And I would urge members to visit the site themselves to see exactly the space in person that this application is proposing to build a 3-bedroom house with parking and so-called amenity space in. We all know we need to provide housing in Medway, but this is not the way. Building a whole house into a back garden in a congested, overdeveloped urban area should be refused as its impact on the community outweighs any contribution to Medway's housing need, and fear of losing a planning appeal is not a planning reason for approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Now go over to members. Any member? Councillor Golvin.
I've listened very carefully to the member's speech. I have not heard any valid planning reason why we should turn this down. So these sites like this, yes, it is a back garden at the moment, but there's been a lot of back gardens developed in exactly this way in my own ward, and certainly when the Chestnut Avenue was part of the ward I represented, there's at least 2 very similar type properties where the back garden in one street abuts another, and that's been developed. My understanding is our local plan is quite dependent on a fair number of these so-called windfall sites. I can't remember the exact number, but it is quite a substantial number we are relying on in order to get our local plan through, and that we will want to defend that, I think, when we discuss the next application. So from what I've heard tonight, I see no reason why we should do that. This, yes, it's only going to provide one new home, but it's one home that will be added to many others. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, I can't see any planning reasons why we should turn it down. In my ward, even Hempstead Road, there have been quite a few properties in my 9 years in Hempstead where the original properties had a long back garden, and then a redevelopment's come and they've got permission to build another property in the back garden with access down the side. And although I don't like it, the precedent's been set across the whole of Medway in that sense. And although it's the loss of a back garden, I think there is plenty of amenity space with that if someone is prepared to live in a place like that. It's not a congested area compared to the rest of Gillingham. And so, again, I can't see any planning reason why we should refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just clarify, you know the garden shown here at number 156, does that meet the minimum garden standards?
Yes, Chair, that would meet the minimum standards at 156.
Okay. And is that 158 next door? Has that garden always been like that, or did it have part of this garden as well?
I think it's relatively complex how the land ownership came into place, but it's certainly been that way for a significant period of time, and that significant period of time is well over 10, 15 years. So 158 has been sold as such, as you can see on the plans. A significant time ago, that is.
Okay, thank you. But any other member? Councillor Peake.
There have been many times in the past where members opposite have wanted us to go against members' recommendation to agree to the proposal with, citing a whole range of reasons, none of which have been planning. And I've said time and time again, we have to have a specific planning reason for something to turn this down. And I actually haven't heard one yet. So I throw that out there just in case there is one, and then I will decide my decision.
Any other member? No. As has been said by other members, I can't see any planning reason to refuse this application. So therefore, I will be supporting it. So I now move over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Land adjacent to 2A Barrow Road, Gillingham. Chair, move approval with conditions 1 to 16 as set out in the report.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the application?
That's 13, Chair.
Those against?
That's 2, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. So now we move on to agenda item 9, which is planning application land to the south of Moore Street. Principal planner Nick Roberts will be presenting this, so over to you, Nick, once you're ready. So give you time to sit down. So, Councillor Golvin.
Madam Chair, as I think it's only right, as this is quite an important application, we have quite a lengthy debate, I would suggest, on it. So could I beg you for a comfort break at this point?
Yeah, okay, yeah, we'll just break for 5 minutes.
Seconded.
welcome back to agenda item 9, which Nick Roberts is going to present. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So this is an application, it's an outline planning application with all matters reserved other than access for up to 150 dwellings with open space, landscaping and associated works. Just to cover a couple of procedural points before I start the presentation. When the original agenda was circulated, there was a previous iteration of the report that was published. This was subsequently superseded by an updated report which was circulated to members and published online on Thursday. So that's the correct report. There's also an additional item that was added to the second supplementary agenda today relating to the applicant's response to the Council's consideration of the application and essentially the weight given to the various areas of concern that have been raised. So moving on to the presentation, we've got the site outlined in red. It's land to the south of Moore Street and east of Mirisborough Road. Moving on to an aerial image of the application site. So again, we've got the site outlined in red. To the north, we've got Moore Street. We've got residential properties that front onto Moore Street. We've got Lee Academy further north. We've also got Ottoman Key Lane running down here. And there's two sites here, one here and one here that members may be familiar with. So these are two sites that have got consent, which was granted at appeal. This is a Bellway site and this is the Esquire site. This was originally for 66, which is varied under a new permission for 78. And this has permission for 48 dwellings. I think it's pretty much complete. This is currently under construction. To the east, we've got Westmore Farm, and again, residential properties that front onto Moore Street, with open countryside further to the east. To the south, again, open countryside, and to the west, we've got Mirisborough Road and the urban area of Rainham here. So just to touch very briefly on the policy context, on the left-hand side, we have an extract from the Emerging Local Plan Policies map. So as you'll see, the site is in here. The site is not a proposed site allocation as part of the Emerging Local Plan, but what you do see is the site here, which is the Bellway site, the Esquire site, and two other sites, or three sites further to the north. And on the right, we have an extract from the adopted local plan. So as you'll see, it's outside the settlement boundary, which is defined by the black line. It's within an area of local landscape importance, so it's within an alley, as depicted by the green, and it's also directly adjacent to the Moore Street Conservation Area, which is shown by this brown line. So in terms of listed buildings within the vicinity of the site, there are a number of listed buildings, the closest being Westmore Cottage, which is directly opposite. We also have Westmore Farmhouse to the northeast, and we have additional listed buildings here, here and here. They're all Grade 2 listed. Moving on to site photos, so we've got views from Moore Street. So this is at the junction with Ottoman Key Lane. So you've got Moore Street running along here, Mirisborough Road here, and the site is in here. Again, an additional photo from Moore Street. So we're looking towards Rainham in this direction, Newington in this direction. Again, we've got the site in here. And then this is an image from opposite Westmore Farm. You've got the Grade 2 listed Westmore Farmhouse here. You've got the site in here. And then we've got the Bellway site to the right, which is currently being built out. Some views from Mirisborough Road. So this is from the public right-of-way that runs along the southern boundary of the site. So again, the site is in here. We've got Moore Street in the distance here. Again, additional photo taken from along Moore Street. So this is adjacent to the existing settlement boundary. And again, we've got the site in here. And then a final image, again, taken looking across the site here. And these are just site photos taken from within the development itself, or the site itself. So this is at the rear of Westmore Farm. Again, photos from within the site, and again, photos from, this is from the public right-of-way that runs along the southern boundary. So again, looking across the site with Moore Street in the distance, and again, looking across to Mirisborough Road in the distance. So this is a framework parameter plan. So this includes information on the proposed land use, movement routes, building heights and access. So access would be via Moore Street here. separate emergency access here, and then you can see sort of the movement routes through the site. You've got the yellow and orange depict the residential development parcels, and then the green is the open space. And then we have an indicative site plan. So this broadly shows how the development could be accommodated. So again, the development parcels, movement networks through the site, open space, I suppose formal and informal open space. Again, access from Moore Street and the emergency access here. And then the final slide, these show the access arrangement. So again, Moore Street, main access coming off of Moore Street, with a dedicated right-hand lane, so carriageway widening to accommodate a dedicated right-hand lane turn into the site. And then you've got connections into the existing footpath network with a refuge island to provide safer transit across to the northern side of Moore Street. And this just shows the proposed emergency access onto Meresborough Road. So the application has been recommended for refusal for the reasons as set out in the committee report, but in summary, these relate to heritage harm to the conservation area and heritage assets, both designated and non-designated, conflict with the spatial development strategy of the current local plan and the emerging local plan, adverse landscape and visual effects on the countryside and alley, loss of grade 1 agricultural land, and the absence of a completed Section 106 agreement. And in terms of the recommendation, there would be a requirement to refer the application to the Secretary of State as a result of a consultation direction that was introduced March this year, because it would exceed the threshold in terms of obviously the number of dwellings. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Just going over to Chief Planning Officer.
Chair, thank you, Nick. Thank you very much for that that report. Members, in addition to everything that Nick has advised, we have received an initial notification that the applicants are intending to appeal, but that is dependent on the outcome of tonight's meeting. If members overturn and approve the application, there will be no appeal. But if members agree the recommendation for refusal and the referral to the Secretary of State that Nick has required, then there will be an appeal lodged, and that appeal will be heard by way of a public inquiry. Now, in cases like this, members often ask me questions: what are our chances on appeal? And if we lose, will we lose with costs? I'm going to take the second aspect first. To lose with costs mean that one party needs to act unreasonably. For us, that would be to refuse without any evidence or work to substantiate that refusal, i.e. we just refuse it on opinion and subjective views. In this case, working alongside Nick as my main case officer, we have additional planning consultants, we have a heritage officer within the team, and we have a landscape consultant as well. They are experts who have carefully considered the application and based on a proper assessment have come to a considered view. So even if we lose any appeal, I think it's unlikely that we will lose with costs. However, public inquiry appeals in themselves are costly to the public purse. So members need to make a very careful and considered decision tonight. I've just about to finish my third public inquiry in a row. The first one so far has cost the public purse over £200,000. The second one, which this committee didn't object to, but we had to attend the inquiry because it's appeal against non-determination, also cost over £60,000. And the third one, we're still about to finish, so I'm still waiting some invoices, but that will be over £150,000 from the public purse. Now, the costs of the inquiries is not a material planning consideration. What I'm saying is that members need to understand the implications of refusal and fully and properly consider all the planning, the material planning considerations that Nick has carefully put out in the report and in the presentation. So on the first aspect, will we win an appeal? The only honest answer to that is I don't know. The inspector will have to do what I have done and what members need to do now individually, and that is balance the planning issues. I have very carefully checked Nick's report. I've spoken to the consultants and to our heritage experts, and I've gone through all the weighting and balancing necessary, and I, as Chief Planning Officer, support the recommendation to refuse. However, it is about balance. On the supplementary agenda, members will see a table. On that table are set out the material planning issues which form the areas of concern raised by Nick and the team, and the weighting attached to them by my officers, but separately by the applicants. You will see they are different, and an inspector may weigh them differently too. Members, you may weigh them differently too. So members, individually, you need to carefully consider the planning issues and apply weight to them. We are undoubtedly in a housing crisis, and Medway does not have a 5-year housing land supply, and we have failed the housing delivery test. There is therefore a double presumption in favour of sustainable development, and delivery of homes and affordable homes carries substantial weight. This is a point that has been made to me and to this council emphatically by the barristers at the appeals that we're currently facing. However, members, that does not mean that housing should be allowed anywhere. And in this instance, it is considered that the harm identified and explained in the officer's report and presented well by Nick outweighs the benefits, the significant benefits of the delivery of housing. So members, I support the reasons for refusal as set out. I have balanced everything. Members, you need to go through that process and balance the issues yourself. But if you agree the refusal, there will be a public inquiry and an appeal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. No, thank you, Dave. I now go over to members. Any member? Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I find, like the Chief Planning Officer, this is very, very balanced. As he said, there's no doubt that there is a severe housing shortage here in Medway. We've got far too many people on waiting lists. We are far short of our 5-year land supply, and 150 homes on this site. It can't be argued would make a very significant contribution to that. However, reading through the report, certain things just came to me that would balance that. One is there's a need for a clear break between the built-up area of Raynham and the historic hamlet of Moore Street. We also need to preserve the Mayor's Court, Mayorsborough area of local landscape importance, which was, and if we didn't, that would be contrary to policy BN the 25 of the 2003 Medway Local Plan, and also, more importantly, draft policy S4 of the new local plan. And also, I think it is significant that this site is not allocated to development in the submission draft of the Medway Local Plan 2041. That call for sites, I think, has been very carefully gone through by officers and members have had opportunities as well. So I think that is a very significant thing. And the emergency local plan makes provision for sufficient housing land to deliver the identified need without allocating this site. Those are all things that struck me reading the report that are significant. And certainly in my mind, those significant things more than balance out the need for the extra housing. So I will most certainly, Madam Chair, be supporting the officer's recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Brake.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was just looking at the list of letters that have objected to the proposal for various reasons, and certainly I can imagine that officers have considered each and every one of those letters as these have come in. They've obviously looked at them, given them due consideration. And I find it interesting. There's so many issues that are raised on here. Far too many to sort of start going through them individually, but they're all various items that this Medway Council, together with the planning committee in particular, have evaluated right across various and many applications for planning. I do believe that with what we see in front of us, the concerns that are being raised, I think they're all justified. There is not one in there that I can see, well, that's a little bit over the top. And I'm very mindful of the fact that Dave Harris has in fact said to us on many occasions that sometimes an application will be turned down, and obviously the reasons are asked, and sometimes the applicant believes, well, if they can put a couple of the problems right, then don't worry, we can put it back and it'll all be all right and will be approved. But this is such a development, I think we would be foolhardy to really ignore the advice and guidance that we've been given by our own planning department of senior officers that we all have very high regard for. So therefore, I would be opposed and voting against the application that we see here this evening. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I do actually, believe it or not, try to apply some consistency in my thought process. If I went by what I just don't like buildings in the back of a garden, I would vote differently. I would actually look at real planning reasons for turning something down. And it's quite clear by this list, I can do nothing but support the office recommendation to turn this down. It almost sounded like a threat. I'm not saying it was, not by you, but by them. Oh, we're going to sue you if we don't get our way. And it is obviously a shame that so much money is wasted, but we can't be held to ransom for either of those reasons. We should try to do what we think is the right thing, which is what I always try to do, look at the planning reasons, not because I don't like it or because of politics. There's very good planning reasons that's been outlined to turn this down, so I will be agreeing with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Gilbourne.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think on the balance of the arguments, I think for me it is clear that there are many planning reasons why we have a good case to turn this down, and I regret the fact that Belway Homes will probably appeal, as they've threatened, but I think the case we've got is very strong, because this break between the urban area of Raynham, as it says, and Moore Street as a small settlement is vital. And this is, again, one of the reasons why it was in the 2003 local plan not to be included, and with the emerging local plan as well. What we can't determine, of course, is what's happening on the other side of the border with Swale and the developments that they have. But even if that is the case and they want to develop right up to the border, having this break is even more important. And so I will be supporting the recommendation for refusal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? No, I've thoroughly read through the report myself, and I agree with what everyone said tonight, that there are clear grounds for refusal. So I'll be also voting for that. Now move over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. Land to the south of Moore Street and east of Mearsborough Road, Raynham. I'm moving refusal subject to referral to the Secretary of State as required under the Town and Country Planning Consultation England Direction 2026. The grounds for refusal being 1 to 5 as set out in the report. I so move.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the officer's recommendation for refusal.
That's 15, Chair.
The application is therefore refused. Now moving on to agenda item 10, which is a planning application for the land adjacent to Kings North. Peter Hockney, Service Manager, will be presenting this. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This application site you can see here outlined in red, located on Charnel Street. You'll probably recognise both the site and the proposal from recent committee meetings and subsequent resolution, and then a different decision, which I'll get to shortly. But as I say, you can see the aerial photograph here showing the site, and again the site location plan. And these are the photographs of the site and of Charnel Street itself. The application is in outline form and is for the erection of 2 detached dwellings. You can see the indicative layout on the screen in front of you at the moment. The proposal is for these dwellings to be self-built, and the details of those self-build would be informed by the future occupiers as part of reserve matters applications. Again, indicative elevations of what they may look like, but as I say, this is purely for the principle of it at this stage. What I would do is draw members' attention in terms of the history to page 116 of the agenda, where there was a previous planning application 25/0484, which was for 2 self-build dwellings, so almost identical to this proposal, which came to Planning Committee on the 24th of September 2025. At that committee meeting, members balanced the key planning issues, which were essentially the location in the countryside, as opposed to the benefits of the scheme in terms of housing supply, but more specifically the contribution towards the self-build list, which is given greater weight by inspectors and by us and committee as decision makers. At that committee in September last year, members resolved to grant that planning application, subject to Section 106 being completed to secure the self-build element. Following that resolution, the applicant decided that he did not wish for the application or the dwellings to be self-build anymore, and did not want to progress the signing of that Section 106. So as a result, we as officers reconsidered the application, and the additional benefit of self-build, with that being removed from the overall planning balance, we felt that that tipped the balance to one of refusal. As a result, we brought that application back to Planning Committee, and members agreed with that balancing exercise and subsequently refused the application in January of this year. So that decision was issued, and now the applicant is submitting this application essentially to revert back to the self-build proposal, which us as officers and you as Planning Committee deemed to be acceptable in September last year, and as a result we are recommending approval for this application, subject to the completion of the 106 securing the development as self-build. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm now going to go over to Dave Harris, who's got something to read out on behalf of Councillor Croser.
Chair, thank you very much. And you're quite right. This is on behalf of Councillor Croser. These are not my personal views. I agree with the officer's report and presentation by Peter. But Councillor Croser, as ward councillor, has written and asked me to read this out as he can't be here today. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm speaking here today to register a strong objection to this planning application. As you will know, this exact site was recently subject to a planning refusal under reference MC 250484. The fundamental planning constraints, local policy conflicts and environmental harms that led to that refusal remain entirely unresolved. The Council's previous grounds for refusal apply just as heavily today, and this scheme must be rejected on 3 clear grounds. First, the principle of development is entirely wrong. This site lies completely outside any recognised settlement boundary. There is absolutely no overriding local housing need to warrant breaking your well-established rural protection policies. Building 2 massive 5-bedroom, 2-storey houses would have an incongruous, harsh and urbanising effect on what is currently a verdant rural setting. Furthermore, because of this isolated location, future occupants would be overwhelmingly reliant on private cars. This is the definition of unsustainable development. It directly contradicts policy BNE 25, S1 and S2 of the 2003 Medway Local Plan, as well as the sustainability core principles of the NPPF. Second, the applicant has completely ignored the mandatory requirements for biodiversity. They have failed to submit the absolute minimum baseline information required for biodiversity net gain. Without this data, the local planning authority cannot evaluate the impact on local habitats. You cannot be satisfied that this development avoids ecological harm or guarantees the required 10% biodiversity net gain. Approving this would put the Council in direct breach of Schedule 7A of the Town and Country Planning Act. Finally, the environmental failures run even deeper. The site sits within the catchment zone for the internationally protected Thames and Medway estuary marshes special protection areas. Yet the applicant has provided no data to allow you to undertake a required appropriate assessment. The applicant hasn't committed to a financial contribution towards strategic mitigation, such as the Birdwise scheme. This leaves the proposal in direct breach of the Conservation of Habitats and Species regulations, as well as local policies S6 and BNE 35. To conclude, this is an unjustified, unsustainable intrusion into the open countryside, because the structural reasons for your previous refusal have not been overcome. I respectfully ask the committee to protect our local environment and refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Now over to members. Any member? Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think we have to accept that there is a shortage of self-built pots here in Medway, and my understanding is there's quite a significant waiting list for those. And as the officer said, this outweighs the harm to the countryside and the unsustainability of the site. However, having said that, because there is still potential harm to the area, I would expect the 2 buildings to be of exceptionally good architectural quality, of a type that fits into their environment, because I think that would go some way to alleviate the harm to the area. As it wasn't a condition on the application we actually approved, but I personally would like it to come back to this committee so we can ensure that we've got good quality architectural design. So as it was, this came up earlier in the evening, as it wasn't a condition on the previous application that we approved, are we still able to put that on this one? Because I personally think it is important to have a good quality design that this committee can feel happy with having if we approve it this evening.
You can come in, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. Completely understand the points that Councillor Goulven has made. And you're absolutely right, Councillor Goulven. If we're going to approve self-build on this site, they need to be of exceptional quality and sustainable. As Councillor Crozer said in his letter, it's not a sustainable location. It's car dominated. So therefore, we need to get the quality of the build right, but the sustainable quality of the build right as well. And officers will be working hard to deliver on that. In answer to your question, ordinarily, I would say absolutely, members can require it to come back to committee. What I do need to look at is the new legislation which is coming out and will come into effect as of the end of October, and when any reserve matters applications come in, because it may well be that it falls within the section which is automatically delegated to officers. So I'll need to check that. If it does fall within that, Councillor Goulven, what I'll do is find another way to demonstrate to members how officers have taken on board the excellent points that you've made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Peake?
I've been hesitating to say this all evening, but I agree with Councillor Goulven.
And any other member? No, as has been said, oh, sorry, Councillor Gilbourne,
Yeah,
did you have a hand up?
just a quick addition. I think looking at the aerial photographs and knowing a little bit about Charles Street, I don't agree with everything that Councillor Crozier has said, because it's two properties making the village, if you can call it a village, a little bit more concentrated, but it's always been a linear settlement, and adding a couple more properties next to existing properties, I don't see as particular a harm to the environment. And as Councillor Goulven said, you know, that the actual design will be key to making sure it's appropriate. So I'd be supporting this application.
Okay. So Peter Hockney, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to address some of just the 2 points that I think Councillor Crozer raised, obviously through Mr. Harris, in terms of the B&G element and the SAMS payments element. So the B&G, because this development would now be self-build, it is exempted from statutory biodiversity net gain. So there would be no requirement for the 10%, which is why there's no baseline data submitted as part of the application. And then secondly, in terms of the SAMS payments, that's the second part of the proposed section 106, which is part of the recommendation in front of members tonight. Just thought, just for completeness, to address those 2 points. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other member? No, so now go over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. Before I read the recommendation, I assume that the clerk has got a record of the conversation between Councillor Goulven and the Chief Planning Officer about design, that has been duly noted. So land adjacent to Kings North, Charnel Street, High Houstow. The recommendation is approval subject to the applicant completing a unilateral agreement under section 106 to secure the following. 1, to secure the dwellings being delivered as self-build. 2, the payment of I beg your pardon, I'll correct that, the payment of £674.98 plus £550 legal and monitoring officer fees to cover bird mitigation costs, and conditions 1 to 15 as set out in the report. I move all that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that seconded? Right, those for the application?
That's 13, Chair.
Those against?
That's 2, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. Before going on to agenda item 11 and 12, we'll just wait for Councillor Gilbourne to leave.
I mean, I don't really care, to be quite honest, but I thought I'd raise an issue in regards to when Councillor Curry had an application before the committee. When Councillor Curry had an application, the entire Labour group had to leave. Yep. Just a matter for the Chief Planning Officer.
She's doing a running.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
if I could also add to that, not long after I became a councillor, I put an application in for the construction of a conservatory on my own property. And whilst I wasn't present at that planning meeting, I understand that the whole of the Conservative group actually declared an interest, in as much as that they all knew me personally, they were familiar with my home, and they all, as you've just explained, Councillor Maritime, actually left the room, and it was left in the hands of the Labour group, who actually listened to the application, and I'm pleased to say that they did accept it, and I got consent to build my conservatory. So I understand that point because I've been there myself.
We have had another one before where it's been mixed, and some people said it's because they didn't like the actual person in their own group and didn't socialise with them, so they didn't leave. So maybe Councillor Gilbourne hasn't got any friends. So, yes, you're going to speak.
Chair, I think it's down to individual members to make the decision themselves. I think you've summed it up quite well, quite eloquently, the Chairman. The Conservative members don't need to leave, but Councillor Mighton is right, and other councillors are right that if Councillor Gilbourne is someone that you socialise with or is a friend, then you probably should leave. Thanks, Chair.
Councillor Galvin.
Thinking back to your eminent predecessor, Chair, she was quite firm on that, and I think it probably would be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And I
You get an early finish then.
Leave other colleagues to make the decision, because I would be happier with withdrawing. So I will pack up my bags and go and leave it, no doubt, in the capable hands of members opposite.
Yes, Councillor Hellcroft-Scott.
I think it's important that the Tories do depart, because, you know, Councillor Curry is a Labour and Cooperative member, and if we were made to be depart, then surely it's parity. Those are my views. Thank you.
Yeah, Joe, did you want to comment on the legal side? Thank you.
Just to clarify, the mere membership of the same political party does not mean that you need to declare an interest. As Dave has already outlined, it's got to be more than just a mere colleague. It's got to be a sufficient interest that people would consider that you are biased. So someone you socialise with, or someone you're more than a mere colleague for. It's up to individual members to decide whether that relationship requires you to leave or to stay.
Okay. Yes, Councillor Nang. There we go. Deb, that's fine, thank you. Right, so now moving on to planning application, agenda item 11 and 12. There's going to be one planning application for this. One presentation for this instead of two separate ones. So I now go over to Justin Kazembe, who will be presenting.
Good evening, Chair and members. This agenda item relates to a householder and a listed building consent application at the old farmhouse, 4 Harrow Road in Hempstead. The application is for the replacement of an existing conservatory to the rear of the property. This slide here shows the site, which is a Grade 2 listed building, outlined in red here, and its position within the wider area of Hempstead. The property is located on the unmade track of Harrow Road, which you can see just running along here, and can be accessed from Hempstead Road, which you can see here. The site occupies a generous residential plot, and the application relates solely to the rear of the dwelling where the existing conservatory is situated. Here you can see an aerial image of the site within its immediate context. The property benefits from a large rear garden enclosed by mature vegetation and boundary treatments which provide a good degree of screening from neighbouring properties. The existing conservatory can also be seen at the rear of the property here. This aerial photograph provides a closer view of the application site and the relationship between the host dwelling and surrounding residential properties. Members should note the substantial separation distances to neighbouring properties and the extent of the rear garden area. These photographs here show the existing conservatory and the rear elevation of the listed building. The existing conservatory is constructed predominantly from UPVC and is considered a modern addition of limited architectural merit, which does not positively contribute to the significance of the listed building. These images here provide further detail of the existing conservatory and rear elevation. When assessing both applications, particular consideration was given to the impact on the historic character and significance of the Grade 2 listed building, together with the design and appearance of the replacement structure. This slide shows views of the site from Hempstead Road. The image in the middle here shows views of the Flying Saucer Public House from the rear garden of the application site, and the images to the left and right show broader views of the application site from Hempstead Road. To the left here, you can see the Flying Saucer Public House and its siting on Hempstead Road. And to the right here, you can see that whilst there is some limited opportunity for glimpsed views of the proposed conservatory, these views are heavily filtered by mature vegetation and existing boundary treatments. These plans here show the existing floor plan arrangement and footprint of the existing conservatory. Members should note that the existing conservatory has a width of approximately 4.5 metres and a depth of approximately 3.6 metres. This slide here shows the proposed plans and the proposal seeking to replace the existing structure with a single-storey aluminium framed conservatory with extensive glazing. Whilst the replacement structure would increase in width to approximately 7.5 metres, the ridge height would reduce marginally from 2.9 metres to 2.8 metres. The proposal is considered acceptable in design terms and would not result in harm to neighbouring residential amenity due to its lightweight and visual recession. The replacement conservatory is considered to be a more sympathetic addition than the existing UPVC structure and would preserve the architectural and historical merit of the Grade 2 listed building. Therefore, for the reasons set out in the report, both applications are recommended for approval, subject to the conditions set out in both reports. Thank you.
Any members? No, so therefore go over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is the old farmhouse, 4 Harrow Road, Gillingham. The first application recommendation, I'm moving approval with conditions 1 to 3 as set out in the report. I take it you wish me to move the second application separately.
Yes, separate, yeah, thank you.
I so move.
Is that seconded? Thank you. Those for the application?
That's 11, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. So on to agenda item 12. Any member? No. So over to Vice Chairperson, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. The old farmhouse, 4 Harrow Road, Gillingham. This is the listed building consent. I'm moving approval with conditions 1 to 4 as set out in the report.
Is that seconded? Those for?
That's 11, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. Thank you, officers and members. That is the end of tonight's planning committee.